Welcome back to the 27. This is episode 2 of Setup Shorts. Last time we focused on the springs. This week we will be discussing ARBs, otherwise known as anti-roll bars or anti-sway bars. They are already probably one of the most accessible setup adjustments players can make because their effects are so straightforward and apparent. What's interesting about them beyond that is that they work hand in hand with some of the things that the springs do, and in a lot of ways do a better job of it because they specialize in one thing. They affect the lateral stiffness of the car. From a technical level, anti-roll bars are simply metal bars that link the axles in the front and the rear of the car. They add tension and support to that axle. Cars without anti-roll bars, like the one probably parked outside of your house, are what we can consider to be soft. And soft is good. Soft means while cornering, the inside tires stay in contact with the road, and the tires in contact with the road provides the magic word grip. However, there are some negatives to having a soft suspension sometimes, especially with racing applications. With softness comes more chassis roll. In racing, chassis roll isn't always a good thing. For example, when turning left, the chassis wants to roll right like an upside down pendulum. This loads up the outside tires nicely and gradually. But what if you have to make a quick turn to the right again? Rolling takes time, and depending on how quickly you need to turn in the opposite direction, can set that pendulum in motion with a lot of inertia, which is difficult to control. Anti-roll bars serve to limit roll. They physically try to lift the inside tires, which doesn't sound too good for pure grip. But what it does do is speed things up, so if you do have to make a quick turn in the opposite direction, the car is ready for it. But the big reason ARBs are important as far as setups are concerned are because they allow you to determine the stiffness in the front and the rear of the car independently. This massively impacts how the car corners, especially on the edge of grip, how it rotates through a corner. Once again, we are driving the Formula Trainer Advanced at Kansai Circuit. This test we are running a setup with maximum front stiffness and minimum rear softness. This is an understeer package. Note that the springs are set to default, though this will come into play. Try and pay attention to what the car wants to do as well as the wheel inputs. Stiff front ARBs will exhibit the following characteristics. On corner entry, the car will be prone to understeer, but notice when trail braking, the springs working to load up the front of the car, helping it to turn in. But as soon as it's off throttle or coming off throttle mid-corner, the car wants to go straight again. The wheel inputs are exaggerated and the fronts are sliding across the track. If the car has a tendency to understeer entry through mid-corner, softening the front ARB could be a setup adjustment you could try. Evaluating the rear ARB starts mid-corner to exit. The rear of the car will be planted. The car is not rotating. When back on throttle, the springs can help either plant or stiffen the car depending on the spring settings, but notice how sometimes the rear wobbling when coming out of the corner. It's not oversteer. This is just that pendulum effect I was mentioning before. If your car is refusing to rotate mid-corner and doesn't seem to settle on exit and you have to course correct sometimes, stiffening the rear ARB will add rotation and settle the car down. For this next test, we softened the front ARB to the minimum and stiffened the rear to the maximum, a true oversteer package. When trail braking, again, the springs do most of the initial work, but as you release the brakes, start turning in and enter mid-corner, the car will continue to want to turn in, perhaps more than you want it to. Before, the more you release the brakes, the less the car wanted to turn in. Here it's the opposite. When you reach mid-corner, the ARBs take complete control. ARBs that are too soft in the front will grip up in relation to the rear tires, leading to oversteer characteristics, especially in the mid-corner. The car will feel like it wants to over-rotate through the trail braking phase and spin out mid-corner, requiring countersteer. If the car feels like it wants to over-rotate throughout the trail braking zone and especially mid-corner, try stiffening the front ARB. A stiff rear ARB means the outside rear wheel is providing most of the grip and the inside tire is trying to lift off the ground. This can oversaturate the rear outside tires mid-corner. The rears start sliding. This comes across as rotation, which is generally considered fast, but over-rotation isn't. When back on throttle, the springs may help to plant the car, but you'll feel the car is more reactive to throttle inputs. The more the throttle, the more the sliding. The less the throttle, the less the sliding. This is an extreme example of what they call steering with the rear, and instead of course correcting due to roll inertia, you'll be course correcting to get the car straightened out so you can go down the track. If the car is over-rotating mid-corner and beyond, leading to power oversteer, try softening the rear ARB. Now obviously these are both extreme examples of ARB stiffness distribution, but you can see how the ARBs work together though. Mid-corner, there's a gradual exchange of priority from entry to exit, front to rear. Your ultimate goal here is to find balance between the front and the rear of the car. Once you achieve that balance mid-corner, this ratio between front and rear ARB should remain the same track to track unless you change the stiffness of either of the springs, where you would simply use the ARB to offset it. Stiffer front spring, softer front ARB, etc., etc. But you have the ratio now. The next big question is, how stiff or how soft do we go? Well, that depends on two things, you and the track. For tracks that feature chicanes and quick left to rights or right to lefts, a stiffer overall package may feel better to you. Here, maximizing grip and waiting for the car to roll takes too long, as the reaction of the car to quick wheel inputs is more important. For tracks with longer flowing corners, a softer ARB ratio may be better for you because the car will not want to lift the inside tires off the track as much. It will allow for more steady, balanced grip through those long corners. But both of these are entirely up to you, your feel, your driving style, what you're comfortable with. In summation, if your car is prone to understeer on corner entry and mid-corner, reduce the front ARB. If your car is prone to oversteer on corner entry and mid-corner, increase the front ARB. If your car is prone to understeer, especially mid-corner and beyond, increase the rear ARB. If your car is prone to oversteer mid-corner and beyond, decrease the rear ARB. You want to try and find the proper stiffness balance ratio between the front and the rear that feels right for you and the car and the track. You can adjust the overall stiffness or softness of the ARBs together, depending on the track. Quick, fast chicanes, stiffer ARB package, long flowing corners, softer ARBs. One final reminder that ARBs and springs work together, but the value in the ARBs is that they don't do half as much as the springs do, which means you could potentially soften the front springs to handle bumps, curbs, and rumble strips, and use the ARBs only to provide the stiffness on track that you need. Finally, before we wrap up, sometimes the devil is in the details, and a car may feel neutral, but it might not be. One way you can tell if the car is prone to understeer is if both fronts are hotter than the rears and vice versa. If both rears are hotter than the fronts, it could indicate oversteer. Because tire wear and grip from tire heat are concerns, keep an eye on it. If you have a mixed bag of temperatures, well, we will address that in an upcoming episode where we will discuss a big and perhaps daunting setup adjustment, how slow dampers work. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notification button below if you'd be interested in that. In the meantime, thanks for watching and take care.